She called from her trip and said, "I met someone." It's complicated. I said nothing, then packed her things before she came home. She wanted a situationship, just not with me in the picture. I was chopping onions when my phone rang, which feels important now only because of how ordinary it was. Tuesday night, the stove humming. A half-finished meal meant for two. 6 weeks into my girlfriend's solo travel trip, the third one this year, the kind she said she needed to reset. I'd learned not to question those phrases. Finding herself, reconnecting with the world, exploring independence. I told myself those were good things, healthy things. I supported her. That's what partners do when they believe in each other. I wiped my hands on a towel and answered the video call. Her face filled the screen. Warm orange light behind her, some beach or rooftop bar, or wherever she was pretending her life made sense. She didn't smile. That was the first sign. She had that look people get when they've rehearsed something painful and are just waiting to say it before they lose their nerve. My stomach tightened before she even spoke. "Hey," she said. Her voice sounded far away, like she'd already left the conversation emotionally. I said her name and asked how her day was, still trying to keep things normal. She took a breath, a deep one. "I need to talk to you about something important." Those words rearranged the air in the room. I leaned against the counter. The knife stayed on the cutting board. I already knew whatever was coming wouldn't fit neatly into my life. She said she'd met someone. Just like that. Met someone while traveling. They'd been spending time together. Connecting. She hesitated, then used the word that would haunt the next several months of my life. Situationship. I actually laughed at first, not because it was funny, but because my brain refused to accept that sentence as real. I asked her to repeat it. She did, more confidently this time, like she'd practiced saying it out loud. She explained it wasn't exactly dating, not cheating, not a relationship, just a deep emotional connection that felt meaningful and confusing. She said she still loved me. She said that's why she wanted to be honest. She said it was complicated. I remember staring at her face on my phone, noticing tiny details I'd never paid attention to before. The way her eyes flicked to the side like she was checking her own reflection. The way she kept adjusting her hair. I asked the only question that mattered. "While we're together?" She nodded, said yes, technically, but that labels didn't really capture what was happening. I felt something in me go quiet, not break, not explode. Just shut off like a switch flipped and took all the noise with it. I said, "It's not complicated anymore." She frowned, confused. I told her we were done. She blinked like she hadn't expected that response, like there was supposed to be negotiation, processing time, a waiting period where I absorbed the pain quietly while she figured herself out. She said, "Wait, you're breaking up with me?" I told her she'd just broken up with me. She tried to reframe it. Honesty, growth, journey. I let her finish. Then I said goodbye, ended the call, and blocked her number before she could say anything else. I stood there in my kitchen staring at chopped vegetables that suddenly looked foreign, like evidence from a life that didn't exist anymore. I expected to feel devastated. Instead, I felt clear. Shock does that sometimes. It gives you focus. The apartment was mine. I'd been on the lease for 4 years. She'd moved in about a year ago, casually, slowly, a drawer here, a toothbrush there, until one day she was just there. She paid me rent sometimes. Cash. Venmo. Nothing consistent. Nothing official. We'd talked about putting her on the lease eventually, but there was always a reason to wait. I pulled up the lease on my laptop and confirmed what I already knew. My name, only. I didn't sit down to think about it. I started moving. Packing her things felt strangely methodical, like following a checklist in a crisis. She was into minimalism, always talking about not being attached to material things, how objects weighed people down. That philosophy made the job easier. Clothes folded into boxes, toiletries bagged up, books stacked, her laptop wrapped carefully. Crystals. So many crystals. I'd teased her about them before. 20 different stones she believed held energy. I wondered briefly if any of them were supposed to protect against consequences. Yoga mat. Meditation cushion. 3 hours later, everything that belonged to her was boxed and labeled neatly, stacked by the door. I texted her from my work phone, told her her things were packed and she needed to find somewhere else to stay when she got back. The response came immediately. Panic disguised as outrage. She said I couldn't do that, said she lived there. I replied that she stayed there. She wasn't on the lease. We were broken up. She couldn't stay anymore. She said this was insane and we needed to talk in person. I told her there was nothing to talk about. She had a situationship. She could enjoy it somewhere else. I blocked that number too. I slept better than I expected that night. The next morning, her best friend called me. Angry, breathless, already convinced I was the villain. She accused me of being heartless, said my ex was having a breakdown, that she'd cried for hours. I listened. Then I reminded her that my girlfriend had started another relationship while we were together. She dismissed it, said it wasn't a relationship, said I was judgmental, traditional. I told her she could explore those opinions with someone who cared. I hung up. Her mother called that evening, introduced herself like this was a polite conversation between adults, told me her daughter was devastated, that she'd been living with me for a year and had rights. I told her the facts. No lease, no written agreement, sporadic payments, guest. The word guest seemed to enrage her. She accused me of cruelty, said her daughter had been honest, that honesty should count for something. I told her honesty didn't erase betrayal. She said I'd ruined her daughter's life. I reminded her that her daughter already had someone else. She called me names and hung up. A week later, my ex showed up at my door with her brother and best friend. I'd changed the locks that morning. I don't know what I expected to feel when I heard the pounding. Maybe guilt, maybe doubt. I felt neither. I opened the door with the chain still on. Her boxes were stacked neatly in the hallway. She looked shocked, like the reality of consequences had finally become physical. She asked if I was kidding. I told her it was my apartment. Her brother stepped forward, trying to reason with me, saying this was messed up, asking where she was supposed to go. I listed options calmly. Hotel, family, friends, anywhere but here. She started crying, real tears, the kind that used to undo me. She called me baby, said she was confused, said the other guy meant nothing, said she chose me. I told her this wasn't her home anymore. Her best friend filmed everything, accusing me of illegal eviction. I told her to document whatever she wanted. Her brother loaded the boxes while muttering about how low this was. That night, the video went up online, framed as financial abuse. Comments split down the middle. I didn't respond. The building manager stopped by the next day after a complaint, asked if she was on the lease. When I said no, he shrugged and told me to keep it down next time. 2 weeks later, I was served papers, illegal eviction, emotional distress, stolen property. The list of stolen items included things I'd bought myself. I called a lawyer. He reviewed everything and told me it was frivolous. No lease, no consistent rent, no case. It would cost me some money, but it would go away. We filed a response, attached proof. Her lawyer withdrew a week later. Her brother called me after that, accusing me of being happy about her suffering. I told him I didn't want her unhappy. I wanted her responsible. He said she'd broken up with the situationship guy. I wasn't surprised. Apparently, she'd lied to him too. Said we'd been broken up for months. He found out and left. Actions catching up, one by one. That should have been the end. It wasn't. After her lawyer dropped the case, I thought the chaos would taper off. I was wrong. What happened next wasn't loud or dramatic at first. It was quieter, more corrosive, the kind of fallout that seeps into your daily life and poisons things slowly. Her brother's call ended with a warning disguised as concern. She's not doing well, he said. She has nothing now. I told him I didn't take anything from her. She lost what she lost by her own choices. He sighed like I was being deliberately obtuse and hung up. A few days later, her mother started calling again, this time from different numbers. I stopped answering, but the voicemails piled up. Each one followed the same script. You need to help her. This is your responsibility. She trusted you. She's spiraling. One message included a suggestion that I help pay for therapy since I was the source of her trauma. I saved them all and sent them to my lawyer, who told me to keep doing exactly what I was doing. Don't respond. Don't engage. Let them burn themselves out. Meanwhile, her best friend escalated things online. Long posts about narcissistic abuse, financial control, partners who trap women by letting them feel safe and then pulling the rug out when they try to grow. My name wasn't mentioned, but it didn't need to be. People who knew us knew exactly who she was talking about. Comments rolled in, some sympathetic, some skeptical. A few people asked inconvenient questions about the travel, the cheating, the timing. Those comments disappeared quickly. I watched it all from a distance, like observing a fire from across the street. It was surreal seeing my relationship rewritten in public by someone who wasn't there for any of the important moments. Then she started showing up. The first time I came home from work and saw her waiting in the lobby, my chest tightened. She looked smaller somehow, like the confidence had drained out of her. She stood up when she saw me, hopeful. "We need to talk," she said. I told her no and walked past her to the elevator. She didn't follow. The second time she was sitting on the curb outside the building, hair messy, eyes red, staring at nothing. She said she wasn't leaving until I talked to her. I walked right by again. The doorman told me later she stayed there for an hour before leaving. The third time she got inside somehow and was standing outside my door when I got home. That one scared me, not because she was threatening, but because of how desperate she looked. She begged, said she had nowhere else to go, said everyone was full, said she'd made one mistake and I'd ruined her life. I told her she was confusing cause and effect. I called the building manager after that and asked him to make sure she wasn't allowed up anymore. That stopped the visits, but the messages kept coming from random numbers. Accusations, threats, guilt. I blocked every single one. Then her mother sent an email that crossed from emotional manipulation into something almost comical. An itemized bill. First month's rent on a new apartment, security deposit, replacement household items, therapy copays, moving costs. A total at the bottom with a polite request for payment within 30 days. I forwarded it to my lawyer, who called me laughing. He told me not to worry, that I wasn't legally obligated to support an ex-girlfriend, and that this was the kind of thing judges rolled their eyes at. I started to believe maybe that was finally the end. Then I got a call I didn't expect. A man introduced himself and said he knew this was weird, but we needed to talk. He was the guy she'd met while traveling. The situationship. He told me she'd left her phone at his place and he'd seen my number. He said she'd been calling him nonstop from other numbers after he blocked her. Then he told me something that made my stomach drop all over again. He'd found her journal. She'd left it behind too. He said he'd read it because his name was in it, and what he found made him sick. She'd written about me. About him. about how she needed a backup plan, how I was geographically convenient, how she planned to slowly transition from me to him once she was sure, how she'd frame it as self-discovery so I couldn't get angry. He asked if he could send me pictures. I told him yes. When the email came through, I sat down on my couch and stared at the screen for a long time before opening it. The pages were neat, deliberate, dated. This wasn't impulsive. It was a strategy. Seeing my life reduced to bullet points in someone else's exit plan did something to me I didn't expect. It hurt, yes, but more than that, it clarified everything. There was no version of events where I'd misunderstood her, no angle where I'd overreacted. This was who she was when she thought no one was watching. I forwarded everything to my lawyer, who told me to keep it as insurance and not to post anything publicly. A few days later, another lawyer sent a threatening letter about defamation. My lawyer responded, pointing out I'd made no public statements and asking for evidence. We never heard back. Months passed. She moved back in with her parents in a small town a couple hours away. I heard through mutual friends she was working at a coffee shop and taking community college classes. The online campaign fizzled out slowly, especially after her best friend posted a rant about feeling used and unappreciated. Apparently, my ex had stayed with her for a while and worn out her welcome the same way she did everywhere else. Not paying rent, eating all the food, making everything about her. Even that friendship collapsed under the weight of her entitlement. Her brother called me one last time to warn me that she was telling people I'd abused her, not just financially, but physically. That stopped me cold. I told him I'd never laid a hand on her. He said he knew, but that it was getting out of control and he couldn't be part of it. I appreciated the warning and tightened my boundaries even more. Nothing came of the accusations, thankfully. The legal dust settled. I spent some money on lawyers, but it was worth it for the peace of mind. I repainted the apartment, bought new furniture, made it feel like mine again. I started seeing someone new slowly, carefully. She knew the whole story. When I told her my ex had called me from her trip to tell me she was seeing someone else, she shook her head and said that was unhinged. She was patient with my trust issues, understood where they came from. Sometimes when she traveled for work, I still felt that old anxiety creep in. We talked about it. That made all the difference. The last message I ever got from my ex's mother said I'd destroyed a beautiful soul and that I'd have to live with myself. I deleted it without responding. Because the truth is simple. No matter how many words people use to avoid it, she made choices. I responded to them. She chose to see someone else while we were together. She chose to call it a situationship instead of cheating. She chose to expect I'd wait quietly while she figured herself out. And I chose not to. I didn't throw her out. I ended a relationship and asked her to leave my apartment. That's normal. The rest was just consequences unfolding. My life is quieter now, smaller circle, fewer illusions, better peace. Sometimes I think about those journal pages and wonder how much of what we had was real. My therapist says that's normal, that being manipulated creates a fracture in how you remember things. I'm working through it. Some days are harder than others, but I don't regret how I handled it. The relationship ended the moment she started planning her exit with someone else. Everything after that was just noise. I'm not angry anymore. I'm done. And there's a difference.